The alien delegate said, "May God help you when humans go mad, Captain." Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of Unity Prime and watched Earth rotate below him. The blue planet looked peaceful from up here, like nothing bad could ever happen to it. He had been stationed on this orbital platform for 2 years now, serving as the commanding officer of Earth's diplomatic delegation. Most days were boring, filled with paperwork and meetings about trade agreements or cultural exchanges. Today was different. Today the Galactic Council had called an emergency session, and nobody would tell him why. Dr. Lisa Grant walked up beside him, holding a data pad. She was the best xenobiologist humanity had, and she had spent the last 5 years learning everything she could about the alien species in the Council. Her job was to help humans understand how aliens thought, and to help aliens understand humans. Right now she looked worried. "The Council chamber is filling up fast," she said. "Every major species has sent their top representatives." "Something big is happening," Morrison nodded. He had seen the ships arriving all morning, massive vessels from dozens of different worlds, each one carrying diplomats and advisors. The station was more crowded than he had ever seen it. "Any idea what this is about?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "Nobody is talking, but I heard rumors about the Zalkran Empire. They've been expanding their territory again. The Zalkran were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had conquered 17 different civilizations over the past 2,000 years. Most species were terrified of them. Humanity had managed to avoid any conflict with them so far, mostly by staying out of their way. "Let's hope it stays their problem and not ours," Morrison said. They walked together toward the council chamber. The hallways of Unity Prime were wide and tall, designed to accommodate species of all different sizes. Morrison passed a group of floating jellyfish-like creatures from the Velm Collective, then a pair of massive rock beings from Granite Prime. After 2 years he was used to the diversity, but it still amazed him sometimes. Commander Amy Price was waiting outside the chamber doors. She was head of station security and took her job very seriously. She gave Morrison a quick salute. "Captain Ambassador Thelvan asked to speak with you before the session begins," she said. "He's waiting in conference room 7. Morrison frowned. Thelvan was a Kashari, a 4-armed reptilian species known for their wisdom and diplomatic skill. He had served on the council for 3 centuries and was one of the most respected voices in galactic politics. If he wanted a private meeting, it was important. "Tell the council I'll be there shortly," Morrison said. He turned to Lisa. "Come with me. I might need your expertise." They found Thelvan in the small conference room, standing by the window. His scales were a deep green color that seemed to shimmer in the light. All 4 of his arms moved constantly, a nervous habit Morrison had noticed before. The ambassador turned when they entered, and his large eyes studied Morrison carefully. "Captain Morrison, thank you for coming," Thelvan said. His voice was low and raspy. "I needed to speak with you before the session begins. What I have to say may sound strange, but please listen carefully." Morrison sat down. "I'm listening." Thelvan was quiet for a moment, like he was trying to find the right words. "I have spent the last decade studying your species, your history, your wars, your psychology. I have read about your ancient battles and your modern conflicts. I have tried to understand what makes humans different from the other species in the council." "Different how?" Lisa asked. "Every species has the capacity for violence," Thelvan continued. "But humans have something unique. I have read about your wars on Earth before your planet unified. The Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held off an army. The Siege of Stalingrad, where your people fought in the ruins for months. The countless times in your history when humans refused to surrender, even when defeat was certain." Morrison wasn't sure where this was going. "We learned from our past. Humanity is peaceful now. We haven't had a major war in over a century." Thelvan's eyes seemed sad. "That is what worries me, Captain. You have been peaceful for so long that you have forgotten what you are capable of. But I have not forgotten. I have studied your capacity for controlled fury. Today the Zalkran Empire will make demands that involve human territory. If negotiations fail, if they push too far, then may the gods of all our worlds help them. Because I have seen what happens when humans go mad." The words hung in the air. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying the Zalkran are going to threaten us?" "I am saying that the Zalkran do not understand what they are dealing with," Thelvan replied. "They have conquered 17 civilizations. Every single one of those species eventually surrendered when the cost became too high. They retreated, they negotiated, They gave up territory to preserve lives. But humans do not have that reflex. When you are pushed past a certain point, you do not run. You attack. Lisa was typing rapidly on her datapad. Ambassador, are you suggesting that humans have some kind of psychological difference from other species? I am not suggesting it, Dr. Grant. I am stating it as fact. Every species in this council evolved as prey animals or developed civilization through cooperation. You humans are different. You evolved as persistence hunters. You chased your prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. You formed tribes that would fight to the death to protect each other. And somewhere in your evolution, you developed the ability to enter a state of focused rage while still maintaining strategic thought. No other species has this trait. Morrison stood up. Ambassador, with all respect, humanity has changed. We're not the warlike species we used to be. Thelvan moved closer, and all four of his arms gestured at Morrison. You misunderstand me, Captain. I am not criticizing humanity. I am warning the Zalkren. You have been peaceful because you chose peace, not because you are incapable of war, and the Zalkren are about to learn the difference. Before Morrison could respond, an announcement echoed through the station. All delegates were required to report to the council chamber immediately. The emergency session was beginning. Morrison and Lisa followed Thelvan toward the chamber. The massive doors opened, revealing a circular room with seats arranged in tiers. At the center was a raised platform where the High Counselor sat. Forn was a crystalline being, his body made of some kind of living mineral that refracted light in beautiful patterns. He had led the council for 50 years and was known for his fairness and wisdom. The chamber filled quickly. Morrison took his seat in the human section, with Lisa beside him. He could see representatives from hundreds of species all waiting to hear what was so urgent. Vorn's voice resonated through the chamber, somehow speaking in a way that every species could understand. We are gathered here to address a territorial dispute that threatens the stability of this sector. The Zalkren Empire has submitted formal demands regarding 3 colony worlds currently under human administration. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Human colony worlds. A massive door on the far side of the chamber opened, and the Zalkren delegation entered. They were tall, easily 8 feet high, with thick armored skin and powerful limbs. At the front walked War Prince Calthor, the military commander of the Zalkren Empire. His presence filled the room with tension. Calthor approached the center platform and spoke without any greeting or diplomatic courtesy. The worlds designated as New Haven, Second Earth, and Terra Nova fall within territory that rightfully belongs to the Zalkren Empire. We demand that humanity evacuate these worlds within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in military action. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Morrison sat frozen. Those 3 colonies held over 2 million human civilians. Families, children, entire communities that had lived there for decades. Vorn raised a crystalline hand for silence. War Prince Calthor, these worlds have been recognized as human territory for 30 years. What claim does the Zalkren Empire have to them? The claim of strength, Calthor replied coldly. We are expanding our borders. These worlds are in our path. The humans will move, or they will be moved. Morrison stood up. His voice was calm but firm. The answer is no. We will not abandon our people. Calthor turned to look at him, and Morrison could see contempt in the alien's eyes. You are a young species. You do not understand the realities of galactic power. The Zalkren Empire has crushed civilizations far older and stronger than yours. You have 48 hours. Use them wisely. The Zalkren delegation turned and left the chamber. The room exploded into discussion. Morrison could see fear on the faces of many delegates. The Zalkren had never been refused before. Vorn called for order. This council will work toward a diplomatic solution. Captain Morrison, does Earth's government wish to present a formal response? Yes, Morrison said. We need time to consult with our leadership. But I can tell you now that humanity will not abandon 2 million civilians to satisfy the territorial ambitions of any empire. As the session ended, Morrison felt a hand on his shoulder. Thelvan stood behind him, and his expression was grave. You have just drawn a line in the sand, Captain, the old ambassador asked. Aide quietly. The Zalkren will not back down. They cannot without losing face. And now I fear you will show the galaxy what I have tried to warn them about. When humans are given a choice between surrender and war, you always choose war. Morrison looked at the Kashari ambassador. We don't want war. We just want to protect our people. I know, Thelvan replied. That is exactly what makes you so dangerous. You do not fight for conquest or glory, you fight for each other. And there's nothing more terrifying in this galaxy than a species that will die to protect their own. Morrison left the chamber and immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth. The message was simple but urgent. Request full military assessment. The Zalkrin are serious. We may need to show them why humanity earned its council seat. As he watched the message transmit across space toward Earth, Morrison hoped that Thelvan was wrong. He hoped that diplomacy would win the day. But deep down, in a part of himself he didn't like to acknowledge, he knew the old ambassador was right. If the Zalkrin pushed this too far, they were going to learn a lesson that 17 other civilizations had never lived to teach them. Humanity could be peaceful, but humanity could also be something else entirely. And the galaxy was about to find out which version they would face. The alien delegate said, "May God help you when humans go mad." Part 2. The clock was counting down, and every human in the solar system knew it. 48 hours was not a lot of time to evacuate 2 million people, and Earth's government had no intention of trying. Fleet Admiral Peter Collins sat in the command center deep beneath Geneva, watching tactical displays that showed every human ship in the sector. The defense fleet was small compared to what the Zalkrin could bring, but Collins had not built his career by backing down from fights. "Get me Captain Morrison on Unity Prime," he ordered. Within seconds, Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. The captain looked tired but determined. "Admiral, the Council is trying to mediate, but the Zalkrin won't budge," Morrison reported. "They're absolutely convinced we'll evacuate. They can't imagine anyone refusing their demands." Collins leaned forward. "Let me be very clear, Captain. Earth's government has made its decision. We do not abandon our people. Not for the Zalkrin, not for anyone. I'm moving the defense fleet to New Haven right now. Tell the Council that humanity draws the line here." Morrison nodded slowly. "Admiral, our intelligence suggests the Zalkrin fleet is at least 20 times larger than what we can field. This could be a massacre." "Then it will be a massacre they never forget," Collins replied. "Sometimes the only way to win is to make the enemy understand that victory will cost them everything. Get back to the Council and make our position absolutely clear." The transmission ended and Collins turned to his staff. "Get me Captain Nina Hayes. I want the Defiant and every available warship at New Haven within 12 hours. Across the station, Dr. Lisa Grant was working with Dr. Henry Shaw in a small research lab. Shaw was a military strategist who had spent his career studying historical warfare. He had been called up to Unity Prime specifically to help the Council understand human military thinking. Right now he was pulling up old Earth history files on multiple screens. "Look at this," Shaw said, pointing to a display. "The Galactic Council has records on 17 species that the Zalkrin conquered. I've been analyzing their surrender patterns. Every single one followed the same path. Initial resistance, heavy casualties, then negotiated surrender when losses reached 15 to 20% of their military forces." Lisa studied the data. "That's actually pretty rational. Why lose more people when you know you can't win?" "Exactly," Shaw replied. "It's the logical response. But humans don't follow that pattern." I pulled up our own war history and showed it to some of the other species analysts. They thought I was showing them horror stories. The Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans fought to the death. The Defenders of the Alamo. Stalingrad, where Soviet soldiers fought in the ruins for 5 months. Humanity has hundreds of examples where we kept fighting long past the point when any rational species would have surrendered. "Why, though?" Lisa asked. "What makes us different?" Shaw brought up a new screen showing comparative evolutionary biology. Every species in the Council evolved as prey animals or developed through cooperative necessity. Their survival strategy was based on avoiding conflict or working together to overcome threats. But humans evolved as persistence hunters and pack animals. We chased prey until it died from exhaustion. We formed tribes that defended each other to the death. And at some point in our evolution, we developed this unique psychological trait. He pulled up brain scans comparing humans to other species. When most species face overwhelming threat, their fear response triggers retreat or freeze behaviors. But humans have this additional pathway. When we're pushed past a certain threshold, our fear converts into rage. We don't run away, we attack. And we can maintain strategic thinking while in this state. The Kashari call it the red madness. I call it controlled berserking. Lisa felt a chill. And you think the Zalkren are about to trigger this response in humanity? I think they already have, Shaw said quietly. They threatened our civilians. They gave us an ultimatum. They're treating us like every other species they've conquered. But we're not like those species. We're going to fight, and we're going to keep fighting until one side is destroyed. On the colony world New Haven, Governor Tom Bradley was addressing a crowd of colonists in the central square. These were farmers and engineers, teachers and doctors. They had come to this world to build new lives, not to fight wars. But when Bradley told them about the Zalkren ultimatum, not a single person suggested evacuation. Earth Defense is sending ships, Bradley announced, but we need to be ready to defend ourselves. I won't lie to you, if the Zalkren attack, many of us might die. Anyone who wants to evacuate the transports are standing by. No one will judge you. An old farmer named Frank Cooper stood up. Governor, my grandfather told me stories about the old wars on Earth. He said there comes a time when you have to stand up and fight, or you'll spend the rest of your life on your knees. I didn't come all the way out here to build a new world just to hand it over to some alien empire. I'm staying. One by one, the colonists voiced their agreement. Bradley felt proud and terrified at the same time. These people were choosing to stand and fight against an empire that had crushed 17 civilizations. It was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and he wasn't sure which. Back at Unity Prime, the council had convened another emergency session. Captain Morrison stood at the human delegation's platform and addressed the assembled species. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. The United Earth government has reviewed the Zalkren demands. Morrison began. Our answer is no. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not evacuate our people. If the Zalkren Empire wants those worlds, they will have to take them by force. And if they choose that path, they will learn what it costs to threaten humanity. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Several smaller species delegates looked terrified. A few actually got up and left, apparently deciding they wanted nothing to do with what was coming. War Prince Calthor stood in the Zalkren section, his massive form radiating contempt. You are fools. Your fleet is nothing compared to ours. Your technology is inferior. Your numbers are pathetic. We will sweep you aside like insects. Morrison looked directly at the Zalkren commander. Maybe you will, but I promise you this. Every human ship you destroy will take 2 of yours with it. Every colony you attack will cost you blood and time and resources. Every battle will be harder than the last. You might win, War Prince Calthor, but the victory will break you. High Counselor Vorn tried to restore order. Surely there must be a diplomatic solution. War benefits no one. There is a solution, Morrison said. The Zalkren withdraw their demands and recognize human territorial sovereignty. We desire peace, but we will not purchase it with the lives of our civilians. Calthor laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. You speak of peace while threatening war. Typical human hypocrisy. We give you one final chance. Evacuate within the time limit or face annihilation. The Zalkren delegation left the chamber. Ambassador Thelvan approached Morrison with several other concerned delegates. The old Kashari's eyes were filled with worry. Captain, the Zalkren have never been challenged like this, Thelvan said. They cannot back down now without losing face across the entire empire. You have forced them into a corner. They forced themselves, Morrison replied. We asked for nothing except to be left alone. I know, Thelvan said. And that is what makes this so tragic. The Zalkren think they understand warfare. They think this will be like their previous conquests. But they have never faced a species like humanity. They have never fought an enemy that refuses to accept defeat. Dr. Grant joined them with Dr. Shaw close behind. Shaw addressed the gathered delegates. I've been studying Zalkren military doctrine, Shaw said. They rely on overwhelming force and psychological intimidation. Most species surrender before the fighting even gets serious, but that strategy won't work on humans. We've spent 10,000 years fighting each other. We've developed tactics specifically designed to overcome superior number. Auras and technology. The Zalkren are about to get an education in human warfare. At what cost? Asked a small delegate from the plenary cluster. How many will die in this education? Too many, Morrison said quietly. But less than would die if we teach the galaxy that threatening humans is acceptable. Captain Nina Hayes arrived at New Haven with the Earth defense ship Defiant, leading a small fleet of cruisers and destroyers. She was a veteran of several small conflicts with pirates and raiders. But this was different. This was a real war against a major galactic power. Her crew was ready, though. They had trained for this, even if they had hoped it would never come. All ships take defensive positions around the colony, Hayes ordered. Prepare all weapon systems. Launch fighter squadrons. If the Zalkrin want this world, they're going to have to go through us. Her executive officer, a young man named Ben Carter, checked the tactical displays. Captain, enemy fleet detected at the edge of the system. Preliminary count shows over 200 vessels. We have 11 ships. Hayes felt her heart race but kept her voice steady. All ships, this is Captain Hayes. I know the odds look bad. I know most military doctrine would say we should retreat. But we're not here to follow doctrine. We're here to protect 2 million people who are counting on us. The Zalkrin think we'll run. Let's show them they're wrong. On New Haven's surface, Frank Cooper and other colonists were setting up defensive positions. They had farming equipment converted into makeshift weapons. They had constructed barriers around the main settlements. It wasn't much, but it was something. You really think we can fight them? A young woman asked Cooper. I think we can make them regret attacking us, Cooper replied. That's all that matters. When this is over, win or lose, the Zalkrin need to understand that humans don't give up. Maybe then they'll leave the next human colony alone. The countdown continued. With 6 hours remaining before the ultimatum expired, War Prince Calthor sent one final message. It was broadcast to Unity Prime, to New Haven, and to Earth itself. You are insects. We are the storm. Flee or be erased. Captain Hayes received the message on the Defiance Bridge. She thought about her grandmother who had fought in Earth's last major war a century ago. She thought about all the stories of soldiers who had stood against impossible odds. She thought about the 2 million people on the planet below who were depending on her. She opened a channel to the Zalkrin fleet and her response was simple. Come and try. Back at Unity Prime, Ambassador Thelvin stood in an observation room with Council Arbiter Mellon and several other senior officials. They were watching the tactical displays showing both fleets preparing for battle. Thelvin's forearms trembled slightly. They've crossed the line, Thelvin said quietly. The humans have been pushed past their breaking point. Now we will see if my fears were justified. Now we will see what happens when humans go mad. The clock hit 0. The Zalkrin fleet began its approach to New Haven. Captain Hayes gave the order to engage. The first human ship fired its weapons at the advancing enemy. The war had begun. The alien delegate said, May God help you when humans go mad. Part 4 Fleet Admiral Peter Collins stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Vengeance and watched the jump coordinates lock into place. Behind him were 200 warships, every vessel that Earth could spare from defense duties. They were not going to New Haven. They were going straight into the heart of Zalkrin territory. The entire bridge crew was silent, waiting for his order. All ships prepare for jump, Collins said calmly. Today we take the war to them. Today we show the Zalkrin Empire what it means to threaten humanity. The fleet jumped. Space twisted and folded, and suddenly they were no longer in human space. They had emerged deep in the Zalkrin Empire, near one of their major military installations. Alarms immediately blared on every Zalkrin station and ship in the sector. No enemy fleet had ever penetrated this far into their territory before. Commander Sophie Blake was at the intelligence station, monitoring all Zalkrin communications. She was hearing panic in their transmissions. They had not expected this. They thought the humans would defend their colonies and slowly lose. They never imagined humans would attack. Admiral, I'm picking up multiple Zalkrin fleets moving to intercept us, Blake reported. They're pulling ships from all over the sector. Collins nodded. Good. Every ship they send here is one less ship attacking New Haven. Broadcast our message on all frequencies. Blake activated the transmission. Collins had recorded it before they jumped, and now every Zalkrin in the sector heard his words. This is Fleet Admiral Peter Collins of the United Earth Defense Force. You attacked our colonies. You killed our people. You thought we would surrender? You were wrong. This is just the beginning. For every human who dies, we will make your empire pay. We are not here to conquer. We are here to teach you a lesson. Leave humanity alone or we will burn your empire to ash. The message was not subtle. It was not diplomatic. It was a promise of violence, and Collins meant every word. The human fleet began its attack, targeting Zalkrin military stations and supply depots. They were not trying to hold territory. They were trying to cause maximum damage and disruption. On New Haven, 3 days had passed since the battle began. The Zalkrin controlled the surface, but Governor Tom Bradley and his surviving defenders were still fighting from the underground tunnels. They had lost 70% of their people, but the remaining fighters were more determined than ever. Frank Cooper led a raid that destroyed a Zalkrin ammunition depot, killing 50 enemy soldiers in the explosion. The Zalkrin ground commander was losing patience. He sent his troops into the tunnels to finish the resistance once and for all. It was exactly what Cooper had hoped for. The humans knew every passage, every junction, every dead end. The Zalkrin troops found themselves in brutal close-quarters combat, where their superior weapons and armor mattered less. They were fighting in the dark against an enemy that had nothing left to lose. At Unity Prime, the Galactic Council was in emergency session again. This time the mood was very different. The delegates were not discussing how to stop humanity from being destroyed. They were discussing how to stop humanity from destroying the Zalkrin Empire. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the human platform with Dr. Lisa Grant beside him. They had just presented a detailed report of the human counterattack. "This is madness," one delegate shouted. "The humans are outnumbered and outgunned. They should be suing for peace, not escalating the war." Morrison looked at the speaker calmly. "We tried peace. The Zalkrin rejected it, so now we show them what war costs. Every military installation they have is now a target. Every supply line is vulnerable. Every Zalkrin colony will wonder if they're next. This is what happens when you threaten humanity." War Prince Calthor was also present at this session, and he was furious. His advisors had told him the human counterattack was causing chaos across his empire. Civilians were panicking. Military commanders were demanding reinforcements. Some colonies were even questioning whether the conquest of human worlds was worth the cost. "You are savages," Calthor spat at Morrison. "You attack civilians. You use terror as a weapon. You have no honor." Morrison's expression hardened. "We broadcasted warnings before every attack. We gave civilians time to evacuate. We targeted military installations, not population centers. Your forces showed no such restraint at New Haven. You gave our people 48 hours to abandon their homes or die. Don't lecture us about honor." High Counselor Vorn tried to restore order. "This war benefits no one. Both sides have suffered terrible losses. Surely now is the time for negotiations." "There is a simple path to peace," Morrison said. "The Zalkrin withdraw all forces from human territory. They pay reparations for the destruction at New Haven. They sign a formal treaty recognizing human sovereignty. Do this and the war ends immediately." Calthor laughed bitterly. "And if we refuse? Then we keep fighting," Morrison replied. "We'll keep attacking your territory. We'll keep making this war so expensive that your own people demand peace. We'll fight for years if necessary. We'll fight until your empire collapses or until you finally understand that humanity cannot be bullied into submission." The session ended with no resolution, but as Calthor left the chamber, his advisor Grimthor spoke quietly to him. "My prince, our casualties are now approaching 40% of our available forces. The humans have lost more in total numbers, but they're inflicting damage far beyond what we anticipated. Our economy is suffering. Our people are afraid. Perhaps it is time to reconsider." Calthor wanted to strike Grimthor again, but he knew the advisor was right. This war was spiraling out of control. The humans were supposed to be an easy target. Instead, they had become a nightmare. Admiral Collins and his fleet hit 3 more Zalkrin installations over the next week. Each attack was swift and brutal. The humans would jump in, destroy their targets, and jump out before the Zalkrin could respond effectively. They were not trying to hold ground. They were trying to spread fear and chaos. It was working. Commander Blake decoded a series of internal Zalkrin communications that revealed growing dissent in the Empire. Some colonies were demanding protection. Some military commanders were questioning the war. The civilian population was starting to panic every time human ships appeared in their sectors. "They're not used to this," Blake explained to Collins. "For 2,000 years, the Zalkrin have been the aggressor. They've always fought wars on other species' territory. Now we're bringing the war to them and they don't know how to handle it." Dr. Henry Shaw had joined the fleet as a strategic advisor. He was analyzing Zalkrin psychology and looking for pressure points. He discovered something interesting in their history. The Zalkrin have a cultural concept they call the warrior's price. Shaw told Collins, "It's the idea that any victory must be worth the cost in blood and resources. If the price becomes too high, the victory is considered shameful. We need to make sure the price of conquering human worlds is so high that even winning would be shameful." Collins understood immediately. "We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to make them regret ever attacking us. Exactly, Shaw said. Even if they eventually conquer New Haven, even if they destroy our fleet, they'll remember this war for generations. They'll tell stories about the species that refused to surrender, and they'll never threaten another human world again. Back at New Haven, the fighting in the tunnels had reached a brutal stalemate. The Zalkren had overwhelming numbers, but the terrain favored the defenders. Frank Cooper and his remaining fighters had developed new tactics. They would collapse tunnels behind retreating Zalkren troops, trapping them. They would flood passages with water from the underground rivers. They would set fires that consumed oxygen in enclosed spaces. Governor Bradley was wounded but still leading the resistance. He sent a message to Unity Prime that was broadcast across the galaxy. We are still here. We are still fighting. The Zalkren own the surface of our world, but they do not own us. They can kill us all, and they still will not have truly conquered New Haven. Because conquest requires the conquered to accept defeat. And we will never accept it. We will fight until our last breath, and we will make sure that every Zalkren who survives this battle remembers the price they paid. The message had a powerful effect. Other species in the council began to see humans differently. They were not the young, weak species that needed protection. They were warriors who fought with a ferocity that shocked even the oldest civilizations. Ambassador Thelvan watched the reactions of other delegates and saw fear mixed with respect. They finally understand. Thelvan said to Dr. Grant, "Your species has shown the galaxy something they needed to see. That determination and will can overcome superior technology and numbers. That there are fates worse than death, and humans choose those fates rather than surrender their freedom." Dr. Grant was watching casualty reports from both sides. The numbers were horrific. So many dead on both sides, so much destruction. She wondered if there would be anything left to save when this war finally ended. Was it worth it? She asked Thelvan quietly. All these deaths, all this destruction, just to prove a point? The old ambassador was silent for a long moment. That is a question only humans can answer, Dr. Grant. But I will tell you this. Before this war, the Zalkren Empire believed they could threaten any species with impunity. After this war, they will think very carefully before threatening anyone. Your sacrifice may save countless other species from the same fate. Whether that justifies the cost is something history will judge. Admiral Collins received a priority transmission from Earth. The government was concerned about the length of the campaign and the mounting casualties. They wanted to know if victory was possible. Collins sent back a simple response. Victory was never the goal. The goal is to make the Zalkren Empire understand that threatening humanity has consequences. That goal has been achieved. They will remember this war for 1,000 years. They will teach their children about the species that refused to break. That is the victory that matters. War Prince Calthor sat in his command center and reviewed the strategic situation. His empire was still stronger than humanity. His forces still outnumbered them. But the cost of this war had exceeded all projections. His advisors were openly questioning the campaign now. Some were even suggesting withdrawal. Calthor knew that if he pulled back now, it would be seen as a defeat. The mighty Zalkren Empire, driven to retreat by a young species barely a century into space travel. The shame would be unbearable. But if he continued, how many more would die? How much more damage would the humans inflict? He finally understood what Ambassador Thelvan had tried to warn everyone about. Humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to make losing so painful that victory became meaningless. It was a type of warfare the Zalkren had never encountered. It was psychological as much as physical, and it was working. The alien delegate said, "May God help you when humans go mad." Part 5. The war had lasted 6 months when the message came. War Prince Calthor had been removed from power by his own government, and the new Zalkren leadership was requesting peace negotiations. Captain Jake Morrison received the transmission at Unity Prime and immediately contacted Fleet Admiral Peter Collins. The Admiral was in Zalkren space conducting another raid when he got the news. "They want to negotiate?" Collins asked, his voice carrying across the light years. "After everything they've done, now they want to talk?" Morrison nodded even though Collins couldn't see him. "High Counselor Vorn is offering to mediate. The Zalkren are requesting a ceasefire while terms are discussed." Collins was quiet for a moment. His fleet had just finished destroying another Zalkren supply depot. The human forces were exhausted, running low on ships and ammunition, but they had accomplished their goal. The Zalkran Empire was bleeding from 1,000 cuts and their people were demanding an end to the war. "Tell them we accept the ceasefire," Collins finally said. "But our terms are non-negotiable. Full withdrawal from all human territory, reparations for New Haven, and a formal treaty recognizing our sovereignty. If they don't agree, we keep fighting." The Galactic Council convened 3 days later in the largest chamber on Unity Prime. Every major species sent representatives. This was the first time in galactic history that the Zalkran Empire had been forced to negotiate peace after starting a war. Everyone wanted to witness it. Morrison stood at the human platform with Dr. Lisa Grant and Dr. Henry Shaw beside him. Across the chamber, a new Zalkran delegation had arrived. Their leader was Gremthor, the former advisor who had questioned the war from the beginning. He looked tired and older than his years. High Counselor Vorn spoke first, his crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. "We are here to end a conflict that has cost both sides dearly. The Zalkran Empire has submitted a formal request to negotiate terms of peace. Humanity has agreed to discuss these terms. Let us begin." Gremthor stepped forward. His voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. "The Zalkran Empire acknowledges that our territorial demands were unjust. We withdraw all claims to the worlds known as New Haven, Second Earth, and Terra Nova. We are prepared to pay reparations for the destruction we caused. We ask only that humanity cease its attacks on our territory." Morrison listened carefully. The words were right, but he needed to make sure the lesson was learned. The Zalkran Empire has conquered 17 civilizations over 2,000 years. You did it because those species eventually surrendered when the cost became too high. You thought humanity would do the same. We did not. The question now is whether your empire has learned why. Gremthor met Morrison's eyes. "We have learned. Your species fights differently than any we have encountered. You do not calculate acceptable losses. You do not weigh strategic value against casualties. You simply refuse to stop. It is not rational, but it is effective. The Zalkran Empire will not threaten human territory again." "It's not about being irrational," Dr. Shaw interjected. "It's about understanding that some things are worth more than survival. Our freedom, our people, our right to exist without bowing to empires that think might makes right. That's what you failed to understand." The negotiations continued for hours. The Zalkran agreed to every human demand. They would pay for the reconstruction of New Haven. They would formally recognize human sovereignty over all current colonies. They would sign a mutual non-aggression pact that would last for 100 years. In exchange, humanity would cease all military operations in Zalkran territory and return captured prisoners. When the treaty was finally signed, Ambassador Thelvan approached Morrison. The old Kashari's eyes were filled with relief and sadness at the same time. "It is done," Thelvan said quietly. "The war is over. But the cost was terrible." Morrison nodded. 40,000 human soldiers dead. 200,000 Zalkran soldiers dead. New Haven is in ruins. Half our fleet is destroyed. Yes, the cost was terrible. But it was a cost we were willing to pay. "That is what makes your species so frightening," Thelvan replied. "Not your weapons or your tactics, but your willingness to pay any price to protect what you value." The Zalkran learned that lesson the hard way. The news reached New Haven within hours. Governor Tom Bradley was still in the underground tunnels with the surviving defenders when he received the transmission. The war was over. They had won. He looked around at the faces of the people who had fought beside him for 6 months. Frank Cooper was there, covered in dirt and blood but still alive. They had started with 10,000 defenders. Now fewer than 3,000 remained. "It's over," Bradley announced. "The Zalkran are withdrawing. New Haven is ours again." There were no cheers, no celebration. The survivors were too exhausted and had lost too much. But there was a quiet sense of pride. They had stood against an empire that had crushed 17 civilizations, and they had not broken. Their homes were destroyed, but their spirit was intact. Cooper looked up at the tunnel ceiling toward the surface where the Zalkran were beginning their withdrawal. "We made them remember us. That's something." Admiral Collins brought his fleet home 2 weeks later. Earth orbit was filled with damaged ships and wounded crews. The celebration of victory was muted by the memory of those who hadn't returned. Captain Nina Hayes had been posthumously promoted to admiral for her sacrifice at New Haven. Lieutenant Ben Carter was awarded the highest military honor for his final attack. The list of honored dead was long. Collins met with Earth's government leaders to discuss the future. Everyone agreed that humanity could never be caught unprepared again. The fleet would be rebuilt, larger and stronger than before. New weapons would be developed. Training would be intensified. The peace had been won, but it had shown humanity's vulnerabilities. "We won this war through determination and sacrifice," Collins told the assembled leaders. "But we can't count on that working every time. Next time we face a threat like this, we need to be strong enough that no one dares attack us in the first place." At Unity Prime, Dr. Grant and Dr. Shaw published their joint study on human psychology and warfare. It became required reading for every species in the Galactic Council. The study explained the concept of controlled berserking, the human tendency to fight harder when cornered, and the cultural importance humans placed on concepts like freedom and honor. It was titled, "Understanding Humanity: Why Humans Fight," and it changed how every species viewed Earth. "Your species has taught the galaxy an important lesson," Thelvan told Grant during the publication ceremony. "Power is not just about technology or numbers. It is about will and determination. It is about the refusal to accept defeat even when defeat seems inevitable. The Zalkren had more ships, better weapons, superior technology. But you had something they could not match." "What was that?" Grant asked. "The absolute certainty that you would rather die fighting than live in submission," Thelvan replied. "That certainty is more powerful than any weapon." The memorial service for the fallen was held 1 year after the war ended. A massive monument was constructed on Earth, listing the name of every human who had died in the conflict. Representatives from across the galaxy attended, including a delegation from the Zalkren Empire. Gremthor himself came to pay respects. Morrison spoke at the ceremony, his words directed not just at the humans present but at the entire galaxy watching via broadcast. "We honor those who fell defending humanity's freedom. They gave everything so that we could live in a galaxy that respects our right to exist. They showed the universe that humans are friends you want and enemies you should fear. Not because we seek conflict, but because we will endure any hardship to protect what we cherish." Gremthor stepped forward when Morrison finished. The Zalkren leader looked at the monument with its thousands of names. "The Zalkren Empire wishes to add our own memorial to those we lost in this war. We lost many soldiers, but we learned an even more valuable lesson. There are some species that cannot be conquered. There are some spirits that cannot be broken. Humanity is both. We will teach our children about this war. We will make sure future generations remember what happens when you threaten those who refuse to surrender." After the ceremony, Morrison and Thelvan stood together looking at Earth from the observation deck of Unity Prime. The blue planet looked peaceful again, though the scars of war would take years to fully heal. "Do you think they'll remember?" Morrison asked. "Do you think the galaxy will leave us alone now?" Thelvan's answer was thoughtful. "They will remember. Every species now knows what humanity is capable of when pushed too far. You have shown that determination and sacrifice can overcome superior force. You have proven that some things are worth fighting for no matter the cost. The Zalkren will never forget. Neither will anyone else." "We didn't want this war," Morrison said quietly. "We just wanted peace." "I know," Thelvan replied. "That is what makes your victory so meaningful. You fought not for conquest or glory, but simply for the right to be left alone. That is a cause that resonates across the galaxy. Many species now look at humanity with new respect, some with fear, but all with understanding." Frank Cooper returned to New Haven to help with reconstruction. The planet's surface was scarred from battle but slowly recovering. He stood on his land looking at where his farm had once been. Everything was destroyed, but the soil was still there. The foundation remained. He could rebuild. Other survivors were doing the same across the colony. New buildings were rising from the ruins. Children who had hidden in the tunnels were playing in the streets again. Life was returning to New Haven, changed but unbroken. The colony had paid a terrible price, but it had survived. That was what mattered. Governor Bradley established a new tradition. Every year on the anniversary of the war's end, the entire colony would gather at the Central Memorial. They would read the names of those who had died defending their home. They would tell stories of the battle and the sacrifice. And they would teach the next generation why it had been worth it. The final chapter of the war was written not in battle reports or casualty lists, but in the memory of the galaxy itself. From that point forward, whenever young species joined the Galactic Council, they were taught about the Zalkran War. They learned about the empire that had conquered 17 civilizations and the young species that had refused to be the 18th. They learned about sacrifice and determination and the power of simply refusing to quit. And always, the lesson ended the same way. With the words that Ambassador Thelvin had spoken before the war began, words that had proven prophetic and true. The alien delegate said, "May God help you when humans go mad." The galaxy had seen that madness. They had witnessed the controlled fury of a species that would burn everything around them rather than surrender. They had learned that humanity was not humanity's worst enemy. Humanity was the enemy of anyone foolish enough to threaten what humanity cherished. The peace held. The treaty was honored. And across the galaxy, when species encountered humanity, in trade or diplomacy or simple friendship, they remembered. They remembered the species that had stood against an empire and refused to break. They remembered the price the Zalkran had paid for their arrogance. And they were very, very careful to treat humanity with respect. Because now everyone knew. Push humans too far, and you face something more terrifying than any weapon or any fleet. You face the determination of a species that simply will not stop. You face the fury of beings who fight not just for victory, but for the right to exist on their own terms. You face the madness that comes when peaceful people are forced to become warriors. And as the alien delegate had warned, may God help anyone who forgets that lesson.